This happened during my second year of college, right in the middle of final exams. I was 20 years old and living in a small apartment just off campus with my roommate who had already gone home for the break. The place felt emptier than usual, and I was completely alone for the first time in months. My last exam was scheduled for 8 a.m. the next morning, and it was for my hardest class, Advanced Statistics. I had been putting off studying for weeks, convincing myself I had plenty of time, but suddenly it was 11 p.m. the night before, and I realized just how unprepared I really was. I sat at my desk with textbooks spread everywhere, notes scattered across the floor, and my laptop glowing in the darkness. The apartment was silent except for the occasional hum of the refrigerator and the tapping of my pencil against the desk. I had been studying for hours, my eyes burning from staring at formulas and graphs. I kept telling myself, just one more chapter, just one more practice problem. But my brain felt like it was turning to mush. Every time I read a sentence, I had to read it again because nothing was sticking. Around 2 a.m., I made the decision to get some sleep. I knew I needed rest if I was going to function during the exam, even if I wasn't fully prepared. I dragged myself to my bed, still wearing my sweatpants and hoodie, too exhausted to change. My mind was racing with anxiety about the test, replaying all the concepts I still didn't understand. I kept thinking about how much this exam mattered for my GPA, how disappointed my parents would be if I failed, how I'd have to retake the entire course. The stress felt like a weight pressing down on my chest, even as I tried to relax. I closed my eyes and tried to force myself to sleep, but my thoughts wouldn't stop. I went over practice problems in my head, trying to memorize the steps, the formulas, anything that might help me tomorrow. Eventually, after what felt like hours of tossing and turning, I must have drifted off. I'm not sure how long I was asleep, maybe 30 minutes, maybe an hour. But I remember the moment I started to wake up. At first, I thought I heard something, a soft shuffling sound coming from the corner of my room near the closet. My eyes opened and I could see my room exactly as it was when I fell asleep. The streetlight outside cast a dim orange glow through my window, illuminating the outline of my desk, my chair, the pile of clothes on the floor. Everything looked normal, but something felt wrong. I tried to turn my head to look toward the closet where I heard the sound, but I couldn't move. Not even a little bit. Panic immediately set in. I tried to lift my arm, tried to sit up, tried to call out, but nothing worked. My body was completely frozen. It was like I was trapped inside myself, fully awake and aware but unable to do anything. I could feel my heart starting to pound harder and harder in my chest. Then I heard it again, that shuffling sound, but closer this time. It was coming from the foot of my bed. I forced my eyes to look down, and that's when I saw it. A dark shape standing at the end of my bed, just barely visible in the dim light. It was tall, maybe 7 feet, with long limbs that hung unnaturally at its sides. I couldn't make out any features, no face, no eyes, just a solid black silhouette that seemed to absorb the light around it. My mind screamed at me to run, to get away, but my body refused to cooperate. I tried again to move, to scream, to do anything, but I was completely paralyzed. The figure just stood there, perfectly still, for what felt like an eternity. I could hear my own breathing, shallow and rapid, and the pounding of my heart in my ears. Then, slowly, it started to move. It took one step forward, then another, walking around the side of my bed with slow, deliberate movements. As it got closer, I could feel the temperature in the room drop. The air felt thick and heavy, like I was breathing through water. A pressure started building on my chest, making it harder and harder to breathe. The figure stopped right beside my bed, towering over me. I still couldn't see its face, but I could feel it looking down at me. The weight on my chest grew heavier, like someone was sitting on me, pushing all the air out of my lungs. I tried to gasp for breath, but my mouth wouldn't open. I tried to move my fingers, my toes, anything, but it was like my entire body had been turned to stone. The fear was overwhelming, more intense than anything I'd ever felt. I genuinely thought I was going to die right there in my bed, alone in my apartment with this thing standing over me. Then it leaned down. Slowly, deliberately, it brought its face inches from mine. I could feel something cold radiating from it, could hear a sound like whispering, but I couldn't make out any words. The pressure on my chest became unbearable, crushing, suffocating. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't move. I couldn't scream. My vision started to blur around the edges, and I thought, this is it. This is how it ends. But then, just as suddenly as it appeared, it was gone. The weight on my chest vanished. The figure disappeared. The room returned to normal, and I could move again. I sat up so fast I nearly fell out of bed, gasping for air, looking frantically around my room. Nothing was there. The closet door was closed. The room was empty. My heart was racing so hard, I thought it might burst out of my chest. I turned on every light in the apartment and sat on my couch for the rest of the night, too terrified to go back to sleep. The next morning, I somehow made it through my exam in a complete daze. I could barely focus on the questions. My mind kept replaying what happened. I was exhausted, confused, and honestly scared that I was losing my mind. When I got back to my apartment, I immediately searched online about what I experienced. I typed in everything I could remember. Can't move, dark figure, pressure on chest, awake but paralyzed. That's when I found it. Article after article about something called sleep paralysis. As I read through the descriptions, I felt this strange mix of relief and disbelief. People experiencing this condition remain aware when they wake up but find themselves unable to move or speak, often accompanied by hallucinations involving threatening presences or shadowy figures. The articles explained that it involves misaligned activity between the brain and body, and that it's associated with higher stress levels and poor sleep, which perfectly described my situation during finals week. I learned that what I experienced was actually quite common, especially among college students during high-stress periods. Episodes can affect anywhere from 8% to 50% of people at some point, and stress levels and sleep quality significantly deteriorate during academic exam periods. The terrifying figure I saw wasn't real. It was a hallucination created by my brain during this strange state between sleeping and waking. Reading about sleep paralysis changed everything for me. Knowing that it had a scientific explanation, that I wasn't crazy or being haunted by something supernatural, brought me an incredible sense of relief. It didn't make the experience any less terrifying in the moment, but at least I understood what had happened. I made a promise to myself that day to never let my stress and sleep deprivation get that bad again. I started managing my time better, studying earlier instead of cramming, and making sure I got proper rest, especially during exam periods. I've never experienced sleep paralysis since that night, and I hope I never do again. But if it does happen, at least now I know what it is. And maybe, just maybe, that knowledge will make it a little less terrifying. I've had sleep paralysis for as long as I can remember. It started when I was really young, maybe around 7 or 8 years old. Back then, I didn't even know it had a name or that it was anything unusual. I just thought everyone woke up in the middle of the night sometimes and couldn't move for a bit. My mom told me it was normal, that our bodies just needed a moment to catch up with our brains when we woke up. She said it happened to her too when she was younger, so I never really worried about it. It was just one of those things. Most of the time, it wasn't even scary. I'd wake up, realize I couldn't move, and just wait it out. Sometimes I'd try to wiggle my fingers or toes, but nothing would happen. I'd just lay there looking around my room at the glow-in-the-dark stars on my ceiling or the shadows cast by my nightlight. After a minute or two, the feeling would pass and I'd be able to move again. Then I'd roll over and go back to sleep like nothing happened. It was annoying more than anything else, like when your foot falls asleep and you have to wait for the tingling to go away. The weird thing is, I never had any of those creepy hallucinations that people talk about. No dark figures standing in corners, no demons sitting on my chest, none of that stuff. My parents had warned me that hallucinations could happen with sleep paralysis, that some people see or hear things that aren't really there. They told me if it ever did happen, I should just remind myself it wasn't real and it would go away eventually, just like a bad dream. But honestly, it never did. My episodes were always just me, awake and stuck, staring at my familiar bedroom until I could move again. That changed when I was 13. It was the summer before 8th grade, and I had just gotten back from spending a week at my grandparents' house in Ohio. My grandfather had given me his old wristwatch before I left, the one he wore every day when he worked at the steel mill back in the 70s. It was silver with a leather band that was worn smooth from decades of use, and the face had these Roman numerals that I thought looked really cool. He told me to take good care of it, that it had been with him through a lot of years, and he wanted me to have it now. I wore it every single day after that, even to bed. I loved that watch. One night, about 2 weeks after I got home, I woke up in the middle of the night. I knew right away what was happening because of that familiar feeling of being awake but unable to move. I opened my eyes and looked around my room. Everything seemed normal. My desk was against the wall with my homework scattered on it. My closet door was half open like always, and I could see the digital clock on my nightstand glowing red in the darkness. It read 3:17 a.m. But something felt different this time. I can't really explain it, but there was this weird tension in the air, like something was off. I tried to shake it off, telling myself it was just the same old sleep paralysis and I'd be fine in a minute. Then I heard it. Footsteps. Soft, slow footsteps coming from downstairs. My heart started racing immediately. My parents' bedroom was on the second floor with mine, and my little sister slept right next door. Nobody should have been downstairs. I tried to tell myself it was probably just my dad getting a glass of water or something, but the footsteps didn't sound right. They were too careful, too deliberate. Someone walking like they didn't want to be heard. The footsteps got louder as they approached the stairs. I could hear each individual creak of the wooden steps as whoever it was slowly made their way up. I was completely frozen, not just from the sleep paralysis, but from genuine fear. I tried so hard to move, to call out, to do anything, but my body wouldn't respond. All I could do was lay there and listen as the footsteps reached the top of the stairs and started down the hallway toward my room. I squeezed my eyes shut as tight as I could. My mom's words echoed in my head about hallucinations being a side effect of sleep paralysis, about how they feel real but aren't. I kept repeating to myself that this was just a dream, just my mind playing tricks on me. None of it was real. After about 30 seconds, I carefully opened my eyes again, hoping that whatever I thought I heard would be gone. But it wasn't. My bedroom door was opening. Slowly, inch by inch, it creaked open and a dark silhouette stepped inside. It looked like a man, tall and thin, moving with that same careful slowness I'd heard on the stairs. I wanted to scream so badly, wanted to yell for my parents, but I couldn't make a sound. My throat felt completely locked, like someone was squeezing it shut. I closed my eyes again, harder this time, trying desperately to wake myself up from what had to be a nightmare. This couldn't be happening. It wasn't real. But I could still hear the soft footsteps crossing my bedroom floor, getting closer to my bed. The old wooden boards beneath the carpet creaked under the weight. The footsteps stopped right next to my bed. I could feel someone standing there, feel their presence inches away from me. My whole body was screaming at me to move, to run, but I was completely paralyzed. Then I felt it. A hand, cold fingers brushing against my left wrist where my grandfather's watch was. I felt the leather band loosen as someone carefully unclasped it and slid it off my arm. The footsteps moved away after that, back across my room, and I heard my door quietly close. I still couldn't move, couldn't open my eyes, couldn't do anything except lay there with my heart pounding so hard I thought it might explode. All I could think about was that watch, my grandfather's watch, and whether what just happened was real or not. I don't know how long I laid there before I finally fell back asleep. The next thing I remember is waking up to sunlight streaming through my window and my mom calling me down for breakfast. I sat up quickly, my heart racing again as everything from the night before came rushing back. I immediately looked at my left wrist. The watch was gone. I tore apart my bed, checking under the pillows, between the sheets, everywhere. Nothing. I got down on my hands and knees and looked under the bed, thinking maybe it had fallen off during the night. It wasn't there. I checked my nightstand, my desk, even my closet, telling myself I must have taken it off before bed and just forgotten where I put it. But deep down, I knew I hadn't. I never took that watch off. I ran to my parents' room, tears already streaming down my face. I told them everything about the footsteps, the figure in my room, the watch being taken. I could tell they thought I'd just had a really vivid nightmare. My dad got up and came to help me search my room, probably just to make me feel better. We looked everywhere, under the bed, in the closet, through all my drawers, even in places that didn't make any sense. The watch was nowhere. My dad expanded the search to the rest of the house. We checked the bathroom, the hallway, downstairs in the living room and kitchen. He even looked in the garage and the backyard, thinking maybe I'd been sleepwalking and taken it somewhere. But we never found it. Not that day, not the next week, not ever. My grandfather's watch just vanished. For weeks after that, I couldn't sleep properly. Every time I closed my eyes, I kept seeing that dark figure in my doorway, kept feeling those cold fingers on my wrist. My parents kept saying it was just sleep paralysis, that I must have taken the watch off in my sleep and misplaced it somewhere we hadn't looked yet. But I knew better. I knew what I experienced that night was different from all my other episodes. The worst part wasn't even losing the watch, as much as that hurt. It was the uncertainty, the not knowing if what happened was real or just a hallucination. Part of me knew that sleep paralysis causes hallucinations, that my mind could have created the whole thing. But the watch was really gone. That part wasn't a dream, and I've never been able to fully explain that away. I still get sleep paralysis sometimes, even now. But it's never been quite the same as that night, and I've never gotten back my grandfather's watch. I'd never experienced sleep paralysis before last spring. I'd heard about it from friends and read stories online, and honestly, I felt pretty lucky that it had never happened to me. It sounded absolutely terrifying. But apparently, my luck ran out. I think it was because of how stressed I was at the time. I was dealing with a lot of anxiety about work and some personal stuff, and my sleep schedule was all over the place. I only had it happen a handful of times over the course of a few weeks, and then it stopped. But that first time was by far the worst. It was around 2 a.m. when I woke up. I have this habit of waking up in the middle of the night to use the bathroom, and usually I just get up, go, and come right back to bed without fully waking up. But that night, when I woke up, I was so exhausted that I decided to just hold it and try to fall back asleep. I figured I could make it until morning. I was lying there on my side, facing the wall, trying to drift off again when I realized something was wrong. I couldn't move, like at all. My body felt completely frozen, like someone had strapped me down to the bed. This had never happened to me before, so immediately my heart started racing. I tried to turn over, tried to sit up, but nothing worked. That's when I heard it. The sound of my bedroom door slowly creaking open. My apartment door was locked. I knew it was locked because I always check it before bed. But someone was opening my bedroom door. I could hear the hinges squeaking as it swung open, and then footsteps. Heavy footsteps on the hardwood floor of my hallway. I wanted to scream. I wanted to yell for my roommate who was sleeping in the next room, but when I tried to open my mouth, nothing came out. Not a sound. My throat felt completely locked up, like someone had their hand around it. The panic was setting in hard at that point, and my heart was pounding so loud I could hear it in my ears. I felt like I couldn't breathe properly, like the air was getting stuck in my chest. The footsteps got closer, and then I heard voices. 2 of them. Male voices talking to each other in low whispers. I couldn't make out what they were saying, but they were right there in my room, standing somewhere behind me. I kept my eyes squeezed shut, hoping that if I just stayed completely still and pretended to be asleep, they would take whatever they wanted and leave. The only thing going through my mind was that they were robbers, that they'd broken into my apartment somehow. But it didn't make sense. Why hadn't my dog barked? He always barks when someone comes to the door, even if it's just the mailman. And how did I not hear them breaking in? I'm usually a really light sleeper. Any little sound wakes me up. None of it made sense, but I was too terrified to think clearly. All I could do was lie there, frozen, listening to these 2 men moving around my room. One of them came closer to my bed. I could feel his presence right next to me, could hear him breathing. It sounded loud and raspy, like he was standing right over me. Then he whispered something. I couldn't understand the words, but it sounded like he was talking directly to me, like he knew I was awake. My whole body went cold. I wanted so badly to move, to run, to do something, but I was completely paralyzed. After what felt like forever, but was probably only a minute or 2, I heard them walk away. Their footsteps moved toward my door, and then I heard it slam shut. The sound echoed through my room, and I was still lying there, unable to move, unable to call for help. I just stayed frozen in that same position until eventually, somehow, I fell back asleep. Here's the really weird part. That night, I had a dream that picked up right where the sleep paralysis left off. In the dream, I got up after they left and immediately went to check if they'd stolen anything. My laptop was on my desk, and I ran over to see if it was still there. It was gone. My wallet that I'd left on my dresser was gone too. In the dream, I rushed to my roommate's room and woke him up, told him everything that happened. We checked our security camera footage on his phone, and there they were. 2 men, dressed in dark clothes, walking into my room and standing right next to my bed where I was sleeping. We ran downstairs to check on our other roommates, and when we got to the living room, they were already on the phone with the police. The TV was gone, the PlayStation was gone, and the whole place was trashed. I've never had such a vivid dream in my entire life. The fact that it started exactly where the sleep paralysis ended made it feel even more real. When I woke up the next morning, the first thing I did was jump out of bed and check my room. My laptop was still on my desk. My wallet was still on my dresser. Everything was exactly where I'd left it. I ran downstairs and the living room was completely normal. Nothing was missing. Nothing was out of place. I checked our security camera footage on my phone, and there was nothing. No one had come into our apartment. No one had been in my room. But I could have sworn it was real. Every single part of it felt completely real, like I was fully awake and aware of everything happening. It wasn't until later that day, when I was telling my roommate about it, that he suggested it might have been sleep paralysis. I'd never really thought about it before, but once I looked it up online, everything made sense. The inability to move, the hallucinations, the feeling of someone in the room, even the voices, they're all classic symptoms. After that night, I had a few more episodes where I couldn't move or breathe, and I'd hear my door opening or closing, or sometimes I'd hear footsteps in the hallway. I always sleep on my side, so I've never actually seen any of the shadowy figures that a lot of other people describe seeing. In that way, I guess I'm lucky. But having auditory hallucinations might actually be worse in some ways. When you can't see what's making the sounds, your imagination fills in the blanks, and that can be even more terrifying. You just have to lie there and listen, hoping that whatever it is doesn't actually exist. Because if it does, you're completely helpless. I'm just grateful that the episode stopped after a few weeks. I started managing my stress better, got my sleep schedule back on track, and it hasn't happened since. But I'll never forget that first time. How real it felt, how convinced I was that someone had broken into my apartment. Sleep paralysis is no joke. Even though I know now what it is and that it's not dangerous, the experience itself is still one of the most frightening things I've ever been through.